It's hard to believe it's been 40 years since Michael Myers and Laurie Strode first crossed paths, but they were reunited in David Gordon Green's Halloween 2018 late last year. If you missed it in theaters, the film is now available on Blu-ray and DVD. Does it live up to the hype? Let's find out in today's Horror Geek Review. Welcome back, Movie Maniacs. I'm Mike Bracken, aka The Horror Geek. Thanks for stopping by and checking out this video. If you like it, please be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for more horrific reviews and features, and then click the bell to get updates whenever I post new content. Now that we've got all that crap out of the way, let's get down to business. There's no denying that John Carpenter's original Halloween was a landmark slasher film. Many of the genre's most beloved tropes can trace their history back to that 1978 classic. Final girls, unstoppable, seemingly supernatural killers, and terrible sequels. The list just goes on and on and on. While few slasher films have managed to live up to Carpenter's masterpiece, including the multiple sequels and reboots Halloween has inspired over the years, I think we were all pretty excited when it was announced that Carpenter would work with director David Gordon Green and the guys over at Blumhouse to create a new Halloween film. There were lots of things for us to be excited about too. Carpenter's involvement, he was coming back to score the new film, the return of Jamie Lee Curtis, who took a break from selling us yogurt to make us poop to return to the role that made her a bona fide scream queen, and the news that Green and screenwriter Danny McBride would take this new film and toss out all of the sequels so that this film would serve as a direct follow-up to Carpenter's original classic. All of which makes it frustrating that Halloween 2018 never quite lives up to its potential. Now, this is not to say the newest film in the franchise isn't good. It has its moments, and we'll get to those in a bit, but that it occasionally flirts with greatness and then pulls back in a way that left me feeling more frustrated than elated. The film's elevator pitch is really pretty simple. Laurie Strode has spent the past 40 years being traumatized by the babysitter murder she survived back in 1978. During this stretch, her life has mostly fallen apart, but she spent her every waking moment dreaming about killing Michael Myers.
Do you know that I pray every night that he would escape?
What the hell did you do that for?
So I can kill him.
When Michael escapes on Halloween Eve, Laurie finally gets her chance, but she'll have to save her daughter and granddaughter in the process. Complications. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's dive into the details. Obviously, there are spoilers ahead, so proceed at your own risk. Seriously, you've been warned. Don't come crying to me if I ruin the film for you. Green's feature is a workmanlike effort that has clearly earned a lot of points with my fellow critics based on nostalgia. Green and McBride obviously have a soft spot for the Halloween franchise, which is readily apparent as soon as the opening credits hit. In one of the more inspired choices the film makes, the opening sequence apes Carpenter's original, only with a decaying pumpkin reverse time-lapsed coming back to life. It's symbolic. The film wants to revive Halloween and Michael Myers, and Green's not going to be shy about his motivations. In fact, he's going to bludgeon you with those motivations repeatedly, just like he's Michael Myers. What's sort of troubling about all of this is that one of the big selling points of this new sequel was that it was set to jettison all the nonsense from the previous films. Halloween has multiple timelines at this point. There are the original two movies, then you sort of deviate into the Thorn mumbo-jumbo in parts 4 through 6, then there's an attempted reboot in H2O and Resurrection, and then Rob Zombie comes along and reboots it all again. It's all convoluted and confusing, and I was delighted to hear we were getting rid of it, if for no other reason than we could finally ditch the whole Laurie is Michael's sister garbage from Halloween 2.
Wasn't it her brother who murdered all those babysitters?
No, it was not her brother. That's something that people made up.
Unfortunately, though, if you're going to remove all those films from canon, you probably shouldn't keep placing little Easter eggs that herald back to these movies in your new film. Halloween 2018 can't help but wink at the audience repeatedly as Green works in one homage to a now non-canon sequel after another. It's at best distracting, and at worst a troubling hint of where the franchise may be headed when the inevitable sequel to this film hits. That sequel is allegedly already in development at Blumhouse, which is no big surprise considering Green's film had a $77 million opening weekend. I'm not going to catalog all the Easter eggs here. If you're really interested, I'll do a video on them. Let me know in the comments section below. but the film is full of them. Too many of them. Of course, it's not all bad. McBride and Green do an admirable job reinventing Michael Myers in the film. Their Myers is a lot like the Shape in the Carpenter original. He's a force of absolute evil, as immutable as fate or destiny. Freed from the contrived need to kill off his bloodline, Myers is once again free to kill at will, and kill he does. This incarnation of Michael is every bit as brutal as Tyler Mane's interpretation of the character in the Rob Zombie films. The kills are brutally executed, surprisingly gory, and there's some genuine tension in the sequences. It's also great to have Curtis back, again. While we saw the return of Laurie Strode in H2O and Resurrection, this is a different Laurie yet again, and the way Curtis portrays the character's struggle to live in the aftermath of surviving a brutal murder spree is a far cry from the typical final girl of slasher cinema history. It's also a bit of a callback to Zombie's much maligned Halloween 2, just minus that whole weird ghost mother with a horse crap. It's also interesting to note how cyclical these things are. Much will be made about the new Laurie Strode's resemblance to Sarah Connor in the Terminator franchise. Terminator was essentially Halloween in gussied-up sci-fi garb, and the new Halloween often feels like the Terminator reimagined as a horror film. It's the circle of cinematic life, or something. Green's not afraid to infuse the film with themes either. There's a reversal of expectations motif running throughout the film, which ultimately manifests in the idea of the hunter becoming the hunted in the film's final act. Even the climax plays with this idea, with Michael falling fully into the Strode's trap when he believes that Laurie's daughter, played by Judy Greer, is too weak to confront him. These reverses occur throughout the film and certainly give it a subtext that's missing from the majority of the previous sequels. It ain't deep, but this is Halloween. Any subtext is welcome at this point. Still, for everything it does right, there's something Green and McBride do egregiously wrong to counter it at almost every turn. The script feels like it's more interested in cramming in homages than crafting the best possible narrative. There are weird story choices, strange bits of dialogue like Andy Matichik's character constantly referring to Laurie as grandmother, which is so overly formal it sticks out like a sore thumb, and some lazy plotting. However, nothing has proven more contentious than the inclusion of Dr. Sartain. Sartain, a stand-in for Donald Pleasance's much-missed Dr. Sam Loomis, is arguably the script's greatest failing. The character isn't particularly well written, and the actor who plays him so over the top that even William Shatner thought he was chewing the scenery. Sartain figures prominently in the film's biggest and most ludicrous twist, killing a Haddonfield sheriff's deputy and then donning Michael's iconic mask for himself. It's arguably the dumbest plot device since Michael somehow swapped places with a paramedic at the end of H2O. I mean, it's a narrative dead end mostly, although it hints at a disturbing Jason Goes to Hell riff wherein Michael himself isn't evil, but is possessed by an evil that can somehow be transferred. But at least it's not through eating hearts, I guess. This whole thing is hinted at again later in the film, but that's probably a discussion for another day. Ultimately, Halloween 2018 mostly coasts by on the strength of nostalgia. This is a movie made for the series' hardcore fans, of which I am a card-carrying member. Seeing Laurie and Michael together again in Haddonfield on Halloween night while Carpenter's score rumbles in the background pushes a lot of the right buttons in my withered black heart. But if you take out the nostalgia, if you imagine someone other than Jamie Lee Curtis in this role, then you start to realize that Halloween 2018 is really just a middle-of-the-road slasher flick. It has some great set pieces, including a really well-executed extended take that is arguably my favorite moment in the entire film, and it's always good to see an icon like Michael Myers pick up the knife again, but it never quite comes together in a way where it transcends to become a classic piece of horror cinema. That's too bad, because the parts are there. It's just that Green and McBride can't quite figure out how to put them together. They're often more interested in trying to cram in homages to every film in the series that isn't canon anymore than they are in trying to create their own distinctive vision. That's unfortunate, but the film is still worth seeing if you love the franchise. It's certainly better than Drek-like Halloween Resurrection. I mean, there's no Busta Rhymes kung fu scene or anything.
Let's see what you got.
Halloween 2018 is now available on Blu-ray, complete with deleted scenes, a making-of featurette, and other assorted materials. It doesn't come with a commentary track, which seems odd, but maybe they're saving that for another super-duper special edition somewhere down the line. You can find a link to purchase your copy below. And there you have it, Gore Geeks, my take on Halloween 2018. While it's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, it's definitely better than pretty much all of the sequels. I'd argue that getting Carpenter back into the fold is a bigger coup than the return of Curtis, but even that's not quite enough to push this one from watchable to classic. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking it, sharing it, and subscribing to the channel. That way you can be a Horror Geek hipster and say, man, I was watching the Horror Geek way back before it was cool. Oh, and don't forget to follow me on social media. Links are below. Until next time, I'm the Horror Geek, and I'm reminding you, always sleep with the lights on.